Hello, Smart Money Tree podcast listeners. Welcome to this week's show. My name is Kirk Chisholm, and I'll be your host. So today I'm joined with Laura Adams. How you doing today, Laura?
Hey, Kirk, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, glad to have you. So for the listeners who aren't familiar with you, tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, I have been working in personal finance for, gosh, it's coming on about 15 years now. Kind of my background is I went and got my MBA and was with a lot of really smart people who were having a lot of problems with their personal finances. And when I was in school, I thought I'm going to go into corporate finance. That was really, kind of my interest. But I realized that there were a lot of folks that were very smart, had multiple degrees, were C-level executives that were struggling with their personal finances. And so a light bulb kind of went off for me that you can be very smart and still, not do well with money if you're not following some really foundational basic principles. And so when I got out of school, I ended up starting to write about personal finance and blogging. This was like, 2006, 2007. It was kind of taking off then. And I was addicted to podcasts. I was listening to all kinds of podcasts. And back then, there weren't very many money and finance podcasts. But I thought, what can I do to sort of give back to the podcast community? So I started podcasting in 2007, and the Money Girl community just kind of grew from there. And I began writing as well. And so I've published 10 books on various personal finance topics since then, and also gotten into doing media. A lot of times they don't tell you when you write a book, you have to go out and promote that book. So I started doing media, really enjoyed it, and also began working with brands that wanted to get a good positive finance message out there. And so I work as a spokesperson, a writer, and a podcaster. So I really enjoy creating content that educates people and kind of tries to communicate with them and resonate with them in a way that will help them take action to improve their financial lives.
Nice, nice. So the hardest job in media is selling a book.
It is. And it's something that it's a very difficult thing to do, to write a book, right? And then you create this thing out in the world, and you really have to get behind it and promote it. So we're always promoting our books, right? I do love writing, but yeah, book writing is kind of a lost art these days. There's not as many people, I think, willing to do it. The advances aren't as good as they used to be. There are a lot of reasons not to write a book, but I always encourage people, if you have a good message and you really almost want to create a thought, a book of work for yourself, which is almost why I started writing. I really wanted to encapsulate all the concepts and the things that I was learning, and wanted to make sure that I could pass those along. So yeah, it's underappreciated these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. The whole book thing. It used to have a lot of like respect, like, oh, you wrote a book. Wow, you must be really smart. Like now it's so easy to write books. And, back when you were doing it was before it got like, easy. And now everyone's like, oh yeah, I just wrote a book. Like, what'd you do? Like, oh, I just talked to somebody for an hour and they wrote it for me. It's such a different
Exactly.
experience, right?
It really is. And you're right. I was kind of on the cusp of when the industry was really changing. And so I was working with Macmillan, which is, a large traditional publisher, was fortunate enough to get a decent advance, and have also self-published books, but my latest book, Money-Smart Solopreneur, was published through Entrepreneur Press. And it does come with a lot of benefits. They certainly do a good bit of marketing for you. But these days, if you're willing to self-publish, there's a lot of easy ways to do that as well.
So let me ask you this, before we get into the financial topics, but you're talking about self-publishing, and I know that's the big thing nowadays. Anyone can self-publish. Is it easier or better to self-publish or to go through a legitimate like publishing house?
For me, I coming in as a brand new author, not having any kind of brand recognition or author recognition, I wanted to go the traditional route so that I could have the credibility of having that big name publisher behind me. I also knew they were going to do a lot of promotion that I couldn't do. At the time, I didn't have a lot of connections, with journalists and reporters like I do now. So back then, it made a lot of sense. And it was so much fun, Kirk, to walk into a bookstore and see your book on the shelf. If you self-publish, it's really more of an online game. You're working on Amazon, you're working kind of in a different, you're marketing in a different way. So for me, my dream had always been to see my book in a bookstore, and I was able to realize that. And so then I thought, maybe self-publishing is another route I want to try, but it's just as difficult, and it just in different ways. You have more control over it, but you maybe don't have those deep marketing connections.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I know. You hear some of the people talk about like the Tim Ferriss of the world who really gamified the publishing the publishing part. Like when he came out as 4 Hour Work Week was he just talks about how he did it. And I was always amazed at like at the nuance that he went to go through all the different steps and how he got it out there and how he found the name and all of it. It was just brilliant. Um, so yeah, kudos to you for publishing a lot of books because to me it's like one of it goes on the bucket list for me. Like writing a book, running a marathon, they're both on the bucket list. I'll probably never do, but it'd be cool to do it. Say, hey, I wrote a book. So
Absolutely. I get it.
yeah, so kudos for you because I also know how much work it is, which is why I don't want to do it. You must go through a tremendous amount of work to put into, thought put into the book and making sure that it's written the right way and that it's actually going to help people. And so, yeah, so awesome. Good on you. So let's get into some personal finance stuff. I know we were talking about it a little bit before the show, but let's talk about, we're in an economy where everything's easy and everything's great. And yet at the same time, things are under the surface are not. Um, and you talk a little bit about solopreneurs starting a business. Let's talk about that a little bit because I think, you know, times are getting financially more challenging for a lot of people. Now, the rich are fine. They'll always be fine. But you've got a big and growing segment of the population that is struggling because of inflation. So it's getting harder and harder to put food on the table, or to have any extra money, because they can't earn more. You get a salary. Well, that's it. And hopefully you get a bump for inflation, which is never the right number. You know, inflation was 23% over COVID. It was probably more like 100%, but people don't say that. So how, let's talk about like starting, but like what should people be thinking about when they're starting a business and should they?
Yeah, I do believe that most people have the ability to earn extra income with a side business. Maybe if that side business grows enough and you like it enough, it could become a full-time source of income for you. I'm somebody, Kirk, that even when I had a 9 to 5, I was always doing side work, writing, doing just all kinds of things, consulting on the side, not only because I wanted the extra income, but it was just fun for me. I enjoyed the variety of work. And it also opens up just some beautiful tax deductions, and abilities to reduce your taxes that I love. So, and not only that, also maybe being able to contribute a little bit more for retirement using some self-employed retirement accounts if you've got enough income to support those higher contribution limits. But I do think that if you're looking for extra income, starting a side business is a great way to kind of give yourself a little bit of breathing room in your financial life. And even if you think about it just as a temporary way to boost your income, you may stumble upon something that you really enjoy. So when you're thinking about what to do, it's helpful to think about what you're already doing. How are you already earning income in a day job? Or maybe you're already freelancing and you're thinking about, kind of spreading your wings a little bit and doing more. Where are your talents? What are your skills? How are you already being paid and valued in the market? And what do you enjoy? Where could you sort of find an additional market or a new market for what you want to do and testing the waters a little bit. I always encourage people just to start slowly. You don't have to make a big investment or borrow money just to have a side gig or start a side business. You can do it slowly, you can do it safely, and sort of test the idea, test the market, and see if it's something not only that can make you money, but it's something that you really do enjoy. Because the problem with a side gig is that you're doing it at night, right? You're doing it on the weekends. You're kind of doing it on top of the work you're already doing. So it does need to be something that you enjoy. Podcasting for me back in 2007, that was a side thing that I started on top of my day job. And I just loved it. I enjoyed it so much that, I thought, hey, I'll do this even if I never get paid for it. Thankfully, it did eventually turn into a paid opportunity, and which led into other things as well. But that's a good place to start, I think, for most people. Where are your skills? What's your talent right now? You don't necessarily need to go back to school or, get a certification in something unless it's something you're really passionate about. So make it as easy as possible, and find out what is possible for you. And again, doesn't have to be forever. It could just be some temporary type of job or income or seasonal work that can help you maybe get out of debt faster or contribute a little bit more for retirement.
Nice. So you're the one getting paid for podcasting. Good on you.
After a long time, Kirk, after a long time. Yeah. So, and again, it is something you have to think about. Do I want income right away, or am I, willing to slowly grow something that's going to build over time? Those could be two very different types of work. For me, I was willing to kind of think about a long horizon. But if you need income right away, it might be, hey, what could I do that my neighbors would pay for? What can I do that I could charge online, maybe as a virtual assistant, or something that could immediately create income for you. And then once you've got that income, you've got some nice opportunities to use some business deductions, maybe some home office deductions, thinking about, yeah, you may have some additional expenses, but you're also going to be able to have some nice business related deductions as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find it scary to start a business, right? Even if they're fully competent, they might even run a corporate, corporate business, been a high level manager or something, and totally have the skill set, and they just get scared. So, what should people
Yeah.
like that be thinking about, or should they? Maybe some people just aren't equipped for that. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of people will say, well, Laura, do I need to form a corporation? Do I need to, open the bank account? Do I need to get the attorney? Like, they're thinking ahead, thinking about all these things. And my response is typically just start earning the revenue. If you can make $10,000 in a year in revenue, that's at the point where you probably need to be thinking about, should I incorporate, or should I have become an LLC? Do I need a special accountant? Do I need some extra help legally? But don't overthink it. I know a lot of people can be sort of paralyzed by the thought of, oh my gosh, this is so complicated. I'm not trained for this. But the reality is, once you prove your whatever you want to think about it as, a side gig or a side business, once you can prove that and earn the income, I usually say 10,000 is about the point where then you want to dive a little bit deeper, make sure you've got the right insurance, think about legal liability. Now, of course, if you're doing something that's got some liability up front, like let's say you're catering food, or you're maybe like a gym instructor, coach, that sort of thing, with any potential liability, yes, you do need to make sure you've got some insurance for that up front. But for most people, if you're consulting or freelancing or teaching, you likely don't need to invest a whole lot until you prove that revenue is going to come in consistently.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So. You, I know one of the things I've seen with business owners a lot, as you kind of suggested, is people get stuck in the minutia. So if you think about it, there's revenue, there's operations and how the business runs, and then there's like all this other stuff. Like, how should people prioritize? Because there's so much to do when you're starting. Some of it's important, some of it's actually not important at all. So where should people be putting the majority of their time and focus?
Yeah, I think at first you really do need to understand and clarify your offer. What are you really providing? What product or service? And being able to really hone in on that. And maybe that means also creating a website or whatever kind of major marketing materials that you might need. Figuring that out, and that might change over time. You may find your market shifts a little bit, but really trying to define that, trying to find customers, connecting with potential customers and asking them about their needs, figuring out prices. I mean, those are really the kind of the big areas to start. Once you get that dialed in and you're creating revenue, then I would say, all right, let's really make sure your bookkeeping is in order. You have some system in place where you're able to mark those expenses that are deductible. You're able to really kind of separate personal and business accounting. Maybe you open up a business bank account. There are many free business bank accounts out there. So you could do that right away without any investment. Really thinking about the accounting aspect of it, you might want to go ahead and just talk to an accountant. If you do have some income coming in or you don't feel that great about bookkeeping, they can help you. If you're going to hire employees, of course, you're going to need to really think about taxes in a little bit better way. Payroll deductions and all of these things are going to come in. But for most people, they're probably thinking about just self-employment as a solopreneur, just themselves, or even relying on other independent contractors, where you would be issuing a 1099 to them and not actually paying salaries. So, again, it just comes back to can you make the revenue consistently? So defining your services, figuring out who your customers are, and then kind of testing it out, offering what you can and testing your price points too. You don't want to be too low, but you don't want to be too high either. So figuring out that sweet spot in price is key.
So what about people who they're not quite sure what business they should start, right? Like, well, I'm not really good at anything, right? Or I don't have any ideas. How should people go about that iterative process?
Yeah, think about you as a consumer. What are things that you're paying for or would pay for, that you probably have a talent for? Is it something as simple as maybe you're good at you're good at math and you could tutor kids on the side? Is it something where you could provide a local service, something related to house sitting, dog sitting? Or are you really computer savvy? You really enjoy being online and you would maybe consider paying somebody as a virtual assistant. That could be a sort of just an idea, just a way to get your brain moving in the direction. What are you paying for? What do you enjoy? That's one. Another is really figuring out a need. Maybe you could talk to other folks. Maybe you're in a particular industry. Maybe you're in real estate. Talking to folks, what are they looking for? Maybe they really need somebody to help them with new listings, putting signs in the yard, creating flyers, creating marketing materials. If you have friends in a particular industry, they may also be a resource to say, this is something in our office or in my industry that I'm constantly trying to find help with. Those sorts of conversations could also trigger something and say, hey, I could do that. This is something in my area or in my field of expertise that I'd be willing to do. So, trying to understand what are your skills, what do you like doing, and what is the market, what does the market need? There are a million things you could do, and so that can feel overwhelming. But you've got to start somewhere. And so testing and trying out different things, maybe it's just a process of elimination to figure out, excuse me, what you really do want to do and where there is a market.
Yeah, no, I think it's smart. It's interesting. I worked with a lot of clients, and many of them work at companies. They're W-2, and they're like, "What can I do to save on taxes?" It's like, I don't know. Start your own business. Like there's. It's funny how the tax code is designed. It's designed to benefit investors. It's designed to benefit business owners. It is not designed to benefit wage earners. Um, it's just the way it is, right? And so, um, what should people, what should people be thinking about if they're looking to save taxes if they're just a W-2 employee and they're not business owners? And then what are some of the advantages of being a business owner?
Yeah, so there are so many wonderful advantages to having your own business, and certainly taxes are a piece of that. Having extra revenue, having those deductions. As you mentioned, W-2 employees don't get a lot of opportunities to cut taxes. One thing to look at if you are W-2 is really look at your withholding. If you're getting a really hefty $3,000 or $4,000 tax refund every year, that might seem, exciting, but what it means is you're overpaying taxes throughout the year, and you probably should adjust your withholding so that you're getting more take-home pay to invest, to save and invest throughout the year. So maybe that's the one thing to look at. But if you've got business income and you're operating a business from home, which many small business owners do, you've got the ability to actually turn some of your personal expenses into business deductions. So you can't deduct all of them, but some that are considered indirect expenses that apply for your home office. So things like your mortgage interest, property taxes, homeowners insurance, some maintenance, utilities, internet, phone, things that affect your home office, but that you're going to pay for anyway, simply because you've got your home. A portion of those expenses, based on the size of your office, is tax deductible. So that's a wonderful way to turn some of the expenses you're going to pay for anyway into deductions. And then, of course, the expenses that are directly for your business are always 100% deductible. So the office supplies, the marketing, the computer, software, things like that you're paying for to actually run your business that are necessary for your business. So in addition, of course, if you've got to travel for your business, you've got to take an overnight trip or a conference. Some of the best trips and vacations I've ever taken have been on the back of a business trip, right? And so we're able to deduct the portion of a trip that is business related. So there are some great ways to kind of make those personal expenses deductible and decrease taxes. Of course, it's going to depend on what you're doing in your business. Are you driving for work? Are you using a business vehicle? Those business miles that you drive are also deductible. So a lot of these things that just kind of will add up over time. So be sure you're keeping up with those. As you start a new business, don't forget that there are a lot of potential deductions. And this is where it can really help you to talk to an accountant, at least when you're starting, and let them say, oh yeah, these are the expenses you need to definitely be sure that we're tracking carefully, because those are deductions. If you don't know they're deductible and you're not tracking them, you may forget about them and then not have the ability to deduct them. But of course, you can go back 3 years. If you forgot some, you can, change and amend your tax returns from 3 years ago if you missed any that are substantial. But for the most part, I do hear people just not being familiar with what are the deductible expenses. And so they're just doing taxes on their own, and they're not taking full advantage of them.
That's great. So, as we're going to wrap it up here, Laura, and appreciate you coming to the show and sharing your wisdom with us. Any final thoughts you can leave our listeners with, and where can people find more about you?
Yeah, I would say really think about ways to increase income. I know for me, that has been one of the ways that I was able to increase my net worth, was really just finding ways to increase income. And it's funny, when you do that and you increase your skills and abilities and you meet new people, that turns into more opportunities. It's like, the flywheel begins, and you have more opportunities and things maybe that you didn't expect. But you got to put yourself out there and just get started. If you're interested, Money-Smart Solopreneur is my latest book. This is definitely a great way to start, especially if you're feeling a little hesitant about what to do and how all of the retirement account works and the taxes work, I go through all of that A to Z in that book. So that could be a way to get a little bit more comfortable with it. And of course, I would love folks to find me on the Money Girl podcast. We have 2 shows a week now, cover all kinds of topics related to personal finance and small business. So that's a great resource if you're willing to go a little deeper or want to go a little deeper in really all areas of personal finance.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, Laura, and sharing your wisdom with us. We'll have you back in the future, and kudos to you for your new book.
Kirk, thank you so much. It's been great being with you. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Doug, did you hear? We're giving away free money. Well, I'll tell you about it in a minute, but before I do, there's a saying in the mining community, well, precious metals mining, that is. The saying is that if you want the best deals, you have to be in the room. Now, you're probably thinking, what does it mean to be in the room? Well, I'll tell you. Being in the room means that you're on the short list of people who get invited to be a part of the best deals. These are the deals that most investors will never have access to. Mean like IPOs? Nope, IPOs are chump change. Those are for retail investors, small potatoes. That's nothing compared to these deals. These deals would have you salivating to get access to them. Once you know they exist, you will never look at investing the same way again. I almost don't want to even tell you that they exist because it will ruin your thinking of how the investing world really works. Now, you might be excited that these deals exist, but you only have access to the deals if you're an insider, or in the room as they call it. Now, as loyal listeners to the show, I'm going to give you a chance to be in the room. Money Tree Investing Podcast has created the Insiders Club. This is a community of our show's members who are loyal listeners of the show and want to get more out of their investing experience. Being a part of the Insiders Club gives you insider status for upcoming events and webinars, discounts, free stuff and books, and influence on the future direction of the show. This is a great opportunity to join us as we expand our content and services. Oh, and did I mention free money? Yes, in the next few weeks, I'll be giving away free money to our members of the Insiders Club as my appreciation for listening to the show. Now, there's no cost to join the Insiders Club. Just go to moneytreepodcast.com/free money today to join the community. That's www.moneytreepodcast.com/free money. I hope to see you in the room. All right, that was a great interview with Laura. Really appreciate her coming on the show. Now we're into the panel portion of the show where we have our very own Doug Hagerin. Hey, Doug.
Hey Kirk, I'm looking forward to talk about this one. This is a fun one. I think that's actually become a highly popular topic of conversation over the last decade or so, and I think it's a really high topic of conversation to some of the younger generations.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And it's just me and Doug today. So we're heading into the holiday weekend. A lot of people are on vacation. So we got a bunch of by the way, we got a bunch of new panelists that are going to be joining us soon. So we're trying to mix things up a little bit and freshen things up, get some new voices. So anyway, yeah, so Doug, so what are some of your takeaways from the interview?
Well, I mean, one of the first things, I mean, that I took away just personally, because I know you were talking to her about publishing, to me was interesting because I've been looking at doing some things too. I think there's quite a few topics, as you know, that I talk about with college planning and finance that I believe are undersuited for a lot of people that are, affluent families and not as affluent families, but it's hit a lot of people, and I think there's a lot of stuff out there. It's a lot of noise. So to me, I think that was interesting because it's not just about getting the following per se, but I think it's also about just establishing identity and expertise, which isn't as I don't think it's as valuable and powerful as it used to be. I do think there's some value to celebrity, but I do think that these days, especially with everything going digital, all things being created faster, I think the art of connection is something that we're losing, and I think that that's going to mean more than expertise, because you can create, it's the barrier of entry to expertise is less than it ever has been. But I also thought that the big takeaway for me that I was kind of alluding to a second ago is the financial landscape change that she's talked about since the early 2000s, and side hustles, especially from a social media narrative. There's actually 39% of Americans now have a side hustle. And among millennials, that number jumps to about 50%. And that's from a website called websidehustlenation.com. I mean, you look at inflation, uncertainty in job markets, viral potential, digital income streams, unlike, kind of the slow burn approach that she took, today's side hustlers often expect very fast monetization, but those expectations don't always match the economic reality. But I think the underlying thing there is an increasing level of desperation as all the stuff you and I talk about in our other conversations are increasingly hitting. And those that don't have the assets, those that haven't been around, predominantly, I think when you're talking younger Gen Z into millennials and Gen X, sorry, younger Gen X into millennials and Gen Z, this is something that is they're more increasingly trying to figure out how do we overcome all of the financial obstacles that we're facing right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because as we get into this new age, this new AI age, I've been following a lot of the foremost thinkers in AI and just like people who are thinkers, right? Because when it comes to AI, AGI, which everyone's scared about, when that hits, if it happens the way people expect, like you can't predict the future. So I've been thinking a lot about in the last few months, and we're going to be doing this on the show. Actually, when this comes out, we'll have already done it. But Doug and I will be talking about AI and the implications on the live shows on Friday for a while. Um, and I think one of the things that really gets me is if you think about the application of AI, it's going to impact every aspect of society, like everything. And so I'm thinking about, how is this going to impact my business? How is it going to impact my clients' businesses? How is it going to impact my kids? I mean, think about it. Like I got teenagers, they're going to go to college, maybe, hopeful, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it anymore, but they're going to go to college and they're going to come out and they're going to be looking for jobs. Well, what jobs are going to be available? That we're looking like, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years from now. What jobs are going to be available in 10 years? What skills do they need to learn to be productive members of society? So Doug and I are Gen X, right? So I think of us as the boomers and Gen X are either going to be the last generation to die or the first generation to live forever. Like if you think about it, like where technology is going, we could be the first generation to live forever because medical technology, the progress from what I've been hearing, is such that we potentially could live forever. Now, whether you want to or not, whether it's allowed, another question. But I think it'd be medically possible at some point in our lifetimes, or we're just the last ones to die, and everyone else is living forever. Which I'm not sure if that's a good idea either. But if you really kind of think about the implications, it is everywhere. It's in health. It's in what are people going to do? Like, what are my kids going to do? They're going to become an accountant or an advisor or an attorney or a doctor. Those jobs probably won't be around anymore. Like, I'm not saying they won't, but you don't know. Like, if you think about it, like a general primary care physician, right? The first one you go to is say, "Hey, doc, this hurts. What should I do?" And they're like, "Oh, you go to a specialist." That that primary care physician, that job doesn't exist anymore because I can just dump all my information to ChatGPT and it's going to give me the solution. And if I need more answers, I can go see a specialist. So that job's gone. You have robots doing surgeries now, and once you get to the point where it can do it itself, you won't need the surgeons. Like, we're not there, but I'm saying that's where we're going. So if you think about all the implications of every single industry, where the industries are going to still be around? Well, the last ones will probably be the human to human connection ones. So like advisors like Doug and I, our primary core work will mainly be AI in the next 10 years, like investing, personal finance, planning, all that. But the personal interconnection will still be there. Like people will still need help with certain psychological aspects and handling, understanding money. That will still be there. because people are still people. They're not going to change because of AI. The answers will be easier to get, but the personal connection will still be there. So I think things like that will still be around for a while, but AI is going to get to the point where you're going to feel real comfortable with AI. It's going to be better than humans. It's going to be more persuasive, be more empathetic. It's going to say all the right things. Like that's a science. Like people do that. Like you can read books on how to exactly do that. So it's not going to be long before AI is as good at doing it as people. The problem is I don't want to talk to AI. I call a big company now and I get an AI person on the phone, and they don't say it's AI. Unfortunately, I wish they did, but I think they should say that. It would make me more comfortable. But I can tell it is, and it's just like, oh, well, what do you need? I'm like, I'm not giving you my voice. Like you're just gonna, because now that people take your voice, and then it's a whole other privacy thing. So I always use the numeric keypad. I never say anything because I don't want them recording my voice and using it, and they'll own it. Um, but point being is, we're into this new era where things are going to dramatically change. So what is valuable? I don't know. Is starting a business valuable? Solving problems valuable? Absolutely. So where is the value going to be in society? You have to you look at this gig economy that the kids are doing these days. But Doug's right. Like we're heading into a time that's going to be more challenging, higher inflation, people struggling. They're going to need that side hustle. They're going to need that side gig. They're going to need another bit of expertise. I just actually just talked to an accountant 5 minutes ago who was he was at the Boston Conservatory for music. That was what he was majoring in. That's what he wanted to do, and he got a side gig as an accountant, as just like helping an accounting firm, just so he could pay the bills. And it turns out that turned into his full time profession. Now he's an accountant, he's an EA, he's got all this stuff. But it was started out as like he wanted to be in music and he needed to pay the bills, so now he's an accountant. So I think all of these things are really important to think about because we don't live in the 1970s where you get a job and you do it until you get a gold watch and then you retire. Like it's not the world we live in anymore. So, what are some things people should be thinking about, Doug, as they're looking at earning extra money or side hustle? Like, how should they be looking at that problem and solving it?
Well, and by the way, I want to say you talked about us maybe being the last generation that dies, the next generation live forever. On a totally separate note, they just released approval the other day, Kirk, from the Food and Drug Administration for dogs. It's an anti-aging pill that they've got conditional approval for that will actually, for dogs that are over 10 years old and weighing 14, its aim is to enhance metabolic health, potentially extending the healthy lifespan by at least 1 year, by mimicking benefits of caloric restriction, metabolic fitness, all these things that, there's a lot of talk about these days. Just crazy. So imagine, 15, 20, 30 years from now, with the way technology is going. It's mind blowing. Um, yeah, to get back to your question there, let's just talk about the current side hustle culture. What are some of the pros of it? I mean, right now, I mean, you can see, I talk about this on our other podcast. You talk about the cost of expenses, college, you talk about the cost of real estate. We talked about this last week, Kirk, on the live show, that, income has generally on average gone up since the 80s. It's gone up about 3x to what it was before. But expenses like housing has gone up somewhere close to double that, right? So they can't keep up. And and you look at all the things we pay for now, we didn't used to pay for, that are just suck money. And some of it you could argue is a discretionary expense, but some of it's just become a necessity in today's world, like paying for this. So, what are some of the pros? Well, you get income diversification. It's critical. I mean, it's just employers aren't paying, especially people on W-2 wages, aren't paying people enough to keep up with that. And then, of course, as she talked about, and we've talked about before, W-2 employees, they don't have any deductions. You talked about this. There's almost no benefit from a tax standpoint to have a W-2 job. I mean, they've raised the standard deduction. Itemizing on top of that is almost impossible. So business, so if you can create, side hustle of some kind, now you've got the ability to have business deductions or reduce taxable income. There, you can't take personal items and put them on business, but there is overlap, no question. For example, this right here, using it for business, using it for personal, there's going to be deductions. Today's day and age, the digital platforms. I mean, it is since 2000, or I'm sorry, since 2020 especially, a lot of people who have moved into where they're making significant thousands of dollars a month just in putting stuff out there on content, things that might be quick hit, maybe buying, doing reselling things on Amazon, other stuff like that. So digital platforms have completely removed entry barriers, and there's a lot of opportunity in skill building and networking. But here's the other thing. And she talked about this. Talk about working at night, especially when you've got a W-2 job. There's time burnout. And some of the most successful people out there, like Gary, what's his name? Gary
Vaynerchuk?
Van. Yes, thank you. He went from something like 300,000 subscribers to millions of subscribers. But how do people like him and Cardone and those people do it? Some of it's a lot of ad spend, and you know this, ad spend has gone a lot more expensive than it used to be. So the entry to this is not the same as when they started it a couple years ago. And there's a lot of things you mentioned, we'll get in on AI, how that could change all that. But the other aspect coming into it is they just have to put content after content. I saw an interview with Mr. Beast, and Jimmy was talking about the burnout of how much they have to do to put out there to find the things and watch the algorithms of what sticks. So there's a lot of time burnout in place there. There's financial overcommitment, poor ROI on both things digitally, but also businesses that get started. A lot of people have jumped into things that are becoming obsolete. There's tax complications if you don't track it correctly. And there's a lot of false promises from oversold get-rich narratives. People are preying on this aspect of desperation that people have in trying to create, other income streams. And, but I think it's a necessity. I think that at these days and age, going back to the W-2, between tax advantages, rising expenses, even like college funding integration. I mean, families are going to need to fund college from a mix of current future incomes. Side hustles can not only boost earnings, but also qualify families for tax advantage savings, and support them. There's, inflation weapon. Side hustles are a potential hedge against stagnant wages and lifestyle erosion. Um, and so, of course, you got to look at, market-driven business ideas. You got to think like a consumer. What are you already paying for that that you could do? What are unmet needs in your circles or industries? I think these are some of the critical things that have to be thought of. But I do think that side hustles, whether it's books or stuff, this is going to become a this is just going to be the new normal. People are going to have to learn how to get incomes from various sources.
Yeah, it's interesting because in Gen X and boomers, we basically picked a profession and we just went into it, right? And people change and all that, like that definitely happens. Um, but for the most part, you kind of picked a profession and you went down that path. And I think the millennials, for all the grief that we give millennials, for being not us, basically, the best way to describe it. Um, they're just a different generation. The one thing I will say they got right, and there's a lot of things they didn't get right, but one of the things they did get right was the fact that they've understood the value of their time. So for boomers, for Gen X, we were kind of caught in this cycle of, the harder you work, the more respected you were. The harder you work, the better you would do, right? Hard work leads to good things. All that stuff was all about hard work. So, when I started, it was, you had to be in the office at ungodly hours. I had friends in New York working in investment banking. They had to be in at like 4 in the morning. They left at, they left at 2 at night. They sleep under their desk, like garbage like that. Like there's just no need for that.
And you
I was,
still see it in places where it's like, oh,
yeah,
I got in before everybody else. Like, really? Like,
yeah. There was a book I read recently called Indistractable, and they were talking about the Boston Consulting Group, and that was part of their culture. Their culture was you had to work harder than everybody else, and everybody's lives were miserable. They had part of their culture was overwork, right? You had to work hard, and they ground people down. They would just they would grind life out of you. And there was a high turnover in employees. And look, I mean, they made that as an example, but they used it as an example because what they did was they had somebody come in with an idea that, hey, what if we did things differently? What if we changed things up? And the partners are like, yeah, yeah, I don't want none of that. So they allowed them to do like a test case in some like far off place with like the interns or whatever they did. And and they got much better results. So then they started to take that model and implement it throughout the whole company. And now, supposedly, according to this book, that the company has a much better culture. People are happier, they're getting better results and all that. And so I find interesting is like, we're all raised with this, tough culture, right? Like when I grew up, you were watching like Schwarzenegger and Stallone and, all these movies, these tough guy movies, the characteristic of our generation was being tough. It was like, yeah, you're latchkey kids, you get home, you find yourself some food, you try not to kill yourself before your parents get home. Like it was just like you're left to your own devices. Like we're one of the few generations that had that. And younger generations are all like helicopter parents or snowplow parents in some cases. But I think there's something lost on that because the kids aren't tough anymore. But there's also the nice part about it was the younger generations have a different respect for their own time, and they're unwilling to they're looking at it in honestly in a proper way. So we looked at it as I'm going to make a lot of money, and from there I'm going to get a big house and nice cars and beautiful stuff and all that, and then you're on your deathbed and you're like, yeah, I got a lot of money, but I didn't enjoy my youth. Whereas the younger generations are like, I'm just going to enjoy my youth, which I think is smart because that's the best time to enjoy it. Take risks when you're young. So if I had to do it over again, which I couldn't in my period, but if I was starting now, I say the best thing to do, take lots of risks. Do all the things you wanted to do, like go travel in Europe, go go live abroad for a year and don't necessarily become an expert in the area, but like live there and like get to know the people and the culture and all that and start a business. Start lots of businesses. What's the worst thing that can happen? You fail and you make a mistake. Well, start again, right? And I can't do that now. Doug can't do that now. I can't go start a business and say, honey, don't worry about the rent. Don't worry about the mortgage. Don't worry about the kids' school and college. I'm just going to go start from scratch. Like, the risk is really high for me to do that now. It's really low when you have no obligations, no kids, no wife, no house, no obligations. You could do that, right? You go live at home with the parents and go start a business. Like that's a legitimate thing to do, but you just can't do in midlife. And so I think the good thing about millennials is, like I said, as much grief as we give them, and they do deserve it, because they have no concept on social norms that most of us had, in part because of the way that their upbringing was. But they do have a better grasp on, I think, on a healthy, balanced life. And as we get into this new era of AI and technology, having a balanced life is going to be important. And it's going to be hard because inflation's going to get higher. It's going to be harder to afford the necessities. The rich are going to get richer. The poor and the middle class are going to get poorer. And there's nothing that's going to change that. There's nothing that any president or any politician is going to do to change that. It's just the way the economy is running. Now, I could come up with some ideas on how it could change, but it's not going to happen. So I'm not going to bring them up. So the thing to think about is what are the skills that you need to be successful in today, or more importantly, tomorrow's economy? I think that's the question you should ask is what are the skills? Not what is the profession you need, but what are the skills that will make you successful? It's not like, oh, I need to learn how to code AI or I need to prompt AI. No, that's the skill for today. That's not a skill for 2 years from now. That's a skill for today. So what is the skills? What are the bare bone essentials that you need to be successful moving forward, regardless of your profession? Because what might happen is maybe 10 years from now, what people are doing is they're solving problems. Oh, there's this problem. Let's go solve that. I'm going to get in a team. We'll put a bunch of people together. Let's solve it. Once it's solved, let's go solve this other problem. And maybe there are no professions. Maybe AI is doing it all, and maybe we're just solving problems, right? And there might be coders and trainers and all that, but really, like if AI becomes sentient and it doesn't need us, then what are the problems that we're really trying to solve? I don't know. And so I think the question is what are the skills you're going to need to survive in that era? And I don't mean like hunting and farming. I mean like agility, quick thinking, critical thinking, um, mindfulness. Like, what are things that you're going to need that are going to be essential to your survival and thriving in this new era? So I think those are things to think about. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, Doug?
Yeah, I think that's a great segue, and leading to other things. With this new era, and by the way, I just saw another thing today where they're talking very rapidly, maybe in the next 10 years. And again, the way technology is going, this could be a viable reality. Regardless of the time frame, it's sooner than people would like to think. They're estimating a two-day work week because they won't have anything for people to do. Everything's going to be, so many things will be automated. And this gets back into some of the arguments, controversial arguments about, basic income, because, and we're already starting to see, with things in software engineering and stuff like that become already rapidly less in demand than it was. But here are my thoughts. Core survival skills for an AI decade economy, like the 2035 horizon. You're still going to need critical thinking and skepticism, not just logic. You're going to need to be able to have discernment. You're going to have the ability to evaluate info, bias, and agenda in what is going to be an AI overloaded world. Humans that ask better questions will lead the ones that are waiting for answers. We've seen this already. AI can generate information, but you've got to be able to judge the quality and consequences. I think communication is always going to be important. You need to have a high emotional quotient and a low BS quotient. That means precision in language, storytelling, and human rapport. This one actually concerns me a little bit because I think the teaching, the communication, especially that we've seen coming out of some of the younger generations right now, not, again, everybody likes to dog the younger generations, but because of social media, because of everything going faster, faster, too long, TLDR, too long, didn't read, everything's like, these acronyms and I forget what they're called, emoticons, whatever, emojis. Ultimately, there is a language and a communication deficit that is continuing to evolve. And so being able to lead with empathy, again, this connection you talked about, proceeding with clarity, resolving conflict across digital mediums, written and spoken, especially when nuance matters. If you can cut through that noise and still connect, it's going to be critical. I think you're going to still need human judgment and high stakes decisions, especially around ethics, trust, safety, finance, life planning. The machines can advise, but you're going to need to decide with those consequences. Judgments isn't teachable in a course. It's comes from experience and accountability. A couple more on this. You're going to have to be adaptable with tech. Obviously, you don't need to code, but you got to understand the thinking, you be comfortable with interfaces, workflows, platforms. Change is a struggle for people. It is a human deficit. It is a survival thing to not change. But the need to change more rapidly, to be comfortable with new things, to automate low value tasks with tools is going to be critical to not get replaced by it, and to learn how to delegate it more effectively. You're still going to need to be able to convince, to talk to people, sales and influence, convince others. It's a meta skill. Everyone's selling. There's ideas, products, visions, more selling than we've ever seen in our life because the barriers of entry are less. Those that can't influence, they're going to get bottlenecked by those who can. Financial literacy is never going to change. This is beyond budgeting. You need to be able to think tax leverage, debt efficiency, equity upside, risk arbitrage. You got to know the game board, not just the rules. And those who understand money structurally will own those who only know who only save it. I actually talk about this in something in writing that there's three types of people. There's billionaires, there's millionaires, and there's thousandaires. Most people are thousandaires. You're not going to get where you need to be just by saving. You're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to leverage. Original thinking, creativity. Just a couple more, Kirk, on this, and I'll turn it back to you. I won't go too deep. They're still going to be there. There's going to need to be resilience and self-regulation, so the ability to focus, to recover from stress. This is something people are going to have to learn because you look at everything you see, we have an incredibly stressed out, mental health is an issue. People are going to have to learn how to recover from that stress. It's not going away. The pressure to go faster and faster is going to be there. You're going to have to be able to be consistent in chaos. Physical health, we're starting to see more focus on that, emotional stability, attention management. Burnout could be a real thing. Strategic relationship building, as I said, that's going to matter. Who you know and trust will matter more than credentials. I started to talk about it a little bit at the beginning with the book writing, problem framing, interdisciplinary, skills. Problems are rarely going to be in silos anymore. There's just going to be so much blending that is going to occur. And I think the thing that summarizes all of this, and I think AI can help this and technology can help this, but self-directed learning. The shelf life of knowledge is collapsing. You're going to have to learn faster, filter smarter, and apply quicker wins. Talk about college. The diploma might open the door, but your ability to retool will decide if you stay in the room.
Yeah, it's so one thing to think about, I mean, we were talking about some kind of mind-boggling ideas here for people, but I think in the short term, one of the things to think about before we wrap it up is what can you do now, right? What can you do now that can help you earn that extra income? It's actually easier than ever to do once you understand how it's all constructed. You have websites where you have people requesting help. You have like I think it's called Upwork, where people are matching up work with people with skills. You've got lots of other sites like that. So you've got
Freelancing's huge.
yeah, freelancing. You've got, a lot of part-time work. There's lots of resources online if you have skills for people who are looking for those skills. And there are a lot of people online that have you can go find people looking for things to do. The fascinating thing that um you've been able to do that for years, and I think people are going to start to need to think about that. What that means is you need some basic understanding of businesses, how to start it, how to think about it. You need that basic understanding to be able to get it up and running and moving so you can make some money quickly. And I think a lot of people get caught in the wantrepreneur stage where entrepreneurs, somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, but they don't actually want to do the work. They just like the idea of it. It's like, um, I think a lot of people refer to it as mental masturbation, right? It's like it feels good to think about starting a business, but actually doing the work is the hard part. So they never get to that stage. They're just like, I just want to keep thinking about ideas, because that's fun. I have to be honest with you. I love thinking about ideas, but I don't act on them because I know how much work it is, but I enjoy the thought process of coming up with ideas. The nice thing is we're entering into a stage where um, things can actually be made to happen. AI is not quite there, but on the cusp of it, where you could just say, all right, here's what I want to do. I want to write a book, and it'll just write a book for you. Now, you can do that now. It just requires a lot more prompting. It would be like, all right, I want to write a book about this topic. Give me an outline. Give me some ideas. And it can basically, you could probably, I mean, I can write an SEO friendly blog post in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And that's with the cheap version of ChatGPT, and that was back in November when it came out, in 23. I could have done that. Now it's just easier. You could probably do it in quicker time, and you could probably do it better. But I was talking to somebody the other day. I was like, I'm thinking of writing a book, but I don't want to write a book because that's a lot of work. So maybe I'll find a way to use AI to help me write a book. I'm thinking about it, right? Because why not? I mean, it has to say what I want it to say, but I don't want to sit down there and write it all. Like, I hate writing. I'm not a writer. Like, it's a lot of work for me, and it's gratifying when I'm done. And I will say this about writing, as I hate writing. Writing is one of those tools that helps you crystallize and solidify your thinking because you put it on paper, it has to make sense. If it's in your head swimming around, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. But when you write it down, and you have to write it in such a way you're trying to convey it to other people. It has to make sense. That's hard. So what I've found over time when I started to write blog posts, because I'd been an advisor since 99, I started writing blog posts maybe around 2014, 13 or 14, something like that. I found that when I started writing, immediately my thinking got crystal clear. I was laser focused on topics. I understood them better because when I write and I realize I don't understand something, now I have to go research it and make sure I'm correct, and I have to research this. And so I put in the time to expand my thinking around the topic and realize, oh, I just had this really superficial opinion about this thing, but now I understand it. And because I understand it better, the whole concept is clearer. So writing in a way helps you crystallize that. And even though I hate it, I tend to do it when I'm trying. It's like doing a business plan. The reason you do a business plan is not because somebody wants to see your business plan. It's because it shows that you went through the thought process of building out all of the details around it and the thinking. All right, I want to start a business, cleaning gutters. Okay, what does that entail? Well, I'm just going to go clean a lot of gutters. Okay, well, how are you going to find the people? What tools do you need? How much time is it going to take? What are you going to charge? What does everybody else charge? Like you go through the whole thought process of, I'm going to have this business. What does it look like? How do I make these determinations? And as you go through the process, you realize, well, this is a really crappy business. I'm going to be working for 50 bucks an hour. I'm not doing that, you know? So you move on, do something else. So that's why you do a business plan. And most people just say, yeah, just superficially, I'm going to put some numbers in there and it'll look good. No, you're not doing it for someone else. You're doing it for the process. There's a term I came up with years ago, and is the process is the goal. So the goal is not the outcome, it's the process. So when you do planning, when you do year-end planning, which I do every year, I do some year-end planning. There's a whole process I go through. And if anyone's interested, just let me know. We run a course in December on this, on how to do year-end planning for yourself. And the idea is, it's called Best Year Ever. And the idea is, you go through this process, and at the end you have some output. The output doesn't matter. What matters is you went through the thought process of the process. So at the end, you have crystal clear opinion of what you want, how you're going to do it, how it's going to happen. You have it all mapped out, on paper and in your head. So you know exactly what needs to be done to get from point A to point B. If you don't do that, it's all like, it's a nice to have. It's like a dream, right? It's never becomes a reality. So when you're trying to do side hustles, you don't have to go through all this work, but if you're going to come up with something that's going to earn extra money, would you rather find a side hustle that's making you $5 an hour or 500 an hour? Well, if you don't put the effort in, how do you know? You might make $500 on a project, but it cost you $495 in other costs. Well, that's not a job, right? That's an adventure. That's not a job. So you really want to think through, like, what are the things that people need? And this is the key to side hustles. What do people need? Not what do you think they're going to need or want? What are they actually asking for? Go to a Facebook group. Go to one of these websites where people are saying, "Hey, I need someone to do X." And like I said, I don't know Upwork, but I'm assuming they do this. Like, oh, find a list of projects people are looking for. What are they looking for? Great. There's 1,000. Everyone's like five. Each project has 5 people, and this one project has 1,000. Well, maybe this is the thing that people really want. Or you go on Facebook and you constantly see in groups, oh, I need this, and no one's solving the problem. Huh, maybe I can solve that problem, right? And think of it that way. You don't want to think about what does your best friend want? What does your mom want? Like your mom wants to give you money. Like your mom doesn't need anything from you. But like figure out what actual people who aren't your friends want and then talk to them. Say, "Hey, I got an idea. You've got this problem. I want to help you solve it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for you for free. I'm going to solve it for free. If you like it, you pay me what you think it was worth to you. How about that?"
Sounds like
Okay.
Radiohead's out in Rainbow's album.
Yeah, I don't know that one, but
They put it
But
out there and said, pay whatever you want for the album. This was back in the late 90s. Anyway.
yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. Like I wouldn't do that, but but if you're trying something small and you're trying to figure things out, like, hey, I want to get into this field. I'm new. I'm still inexperienced. I'm going to do it for you for free. And if you like it, you pay me what you think it's worth. I'm still figuring that out, or here's what I think it's worth. Like, here's what most people pay. If you don't like it, pay me nothing. If you think it's worth less than that amount, pay me what you think it's worth, and I'm good. And what you'll find is you learn the whole process, and eventually, more likely than not, that person's going to pay you, right? Or you come up with something where they pay you something at a minimum. Like, all right, if it sucks, pay me $500 or something. Okay, yeah, it's normally 50 grand. That's fine. I'll pay you for your time. But the process is you're learning about what you're doing, you're practicing it, somebody's giving you a chance, they're giving you feedback. This is key. You're getting feedback on what they want. You're getting full insight into what they want, and you're learning how to present to that person, that next person, person number two, who's just like person number one. You're learning about how to present, like, and there's many ways to do it, but the idea is you're trying to find a problem and you are solving it. And because you're solving, you're saying, all right, here's what I think I'm worth. What do you think? And then you come up with a price. And you come up with a price that makes people a little uncomfortable, but they're still willing to pay for it. That's the idea, right? Just keep nudging the price up until people say uncle and they say, I'm not willing to pay for that. But the whole process is really just iterative. And if you're doing side hustles, um, it's great if you can find one that earns you $1 million, but the reality is you're probably just trying to earn a few grand to pay extra bills. There's plenty of those out there. Don't look down on something that's like, ugh, I could never be seen doing that. That's beneath me. It's not beneath you if you're looking for a side hustle. Nothing is beneath you, right? Think of it as, what's my problem? My problem is I need money and I'm trying to solve that. How do I solve that? I solve that by doing this job. So anyway, Doug, uh, let's final thoughts and where can people find more about you? We got to wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think, and listen, I want to talk about it really quickly. This gentleman named Matthew Butte, I remember he's a Georgetown law graduate. He left the legal path to pursue a more filling career. He's now making somewhere in the range of $400,000 traveling around Southeast Asia doing tutoring. I mean, it's incredible what the opportunities that you can do between, just things that you already have talent in, and monetizing. Don't learn a new school, monetize what you got. Virtual VA students services. I mean, you can make $50 to $100,000 a year on average. Busy professionals, solopreneurs, realtors, everybody's drowning in admin work. Um, Academic tutoring. I mean, we've got local education, through the schools here, where I mean, people are charging $50 a seat just to come hear about everything from making a charcuterie board to how to basically work in Canva, and they like 8 different things out there, and they're getting paid for that. Tutoring, I mean, like I said, hundreds of dollars an hour. Digital products, arbitrage, buying low, selling high. I love what you said about the about getting into something and do the real numbers on it. I mean, one of the things that was always big for flipping, and people love to talk about, hey, you buy that house at 300, sell it at 500. It's at $200,000 you make. No, it's not. There's a lot of cost that goes into, what it takes, plus the taxes, plus the capital gains. I mean, you got to know your numbers. Obviously, if you've got stuff that's unused, you can rent it out, you can deliver it. You can teach workshops, like I said. Pets are big. Pet sitting, monetizing notes, knowledge. There's just so many different things. Again, you've got skills you may not be aware of that you could probably turn into, good numbers. And here's the thing on hourly. I mean, if you can do it full time, just multiply it by 2,000. So if you make $50, if it's $50 an hour, it's $100,000 a year. If you can do it full time, it really is easy to math that out. But again, things are getting more expensive. It's going to become the new reality. There's lots of things that you can do that aren't necessarily going to take a ton of time that you can still monetize. You may already have a tremendous amount of skills in, and at the end of the day, you've got you've got to find new ways to be able to pay for the things that are coming, and that's your everyday expenses. But it's also going to be college. So I'm going to transition this. Listen, if you're a high income parent, College is not just tuition, it's one of the biggest investment decisions you'll ever make. And most families approach it with fragmented advice and blind spots that cost them dearly. Now, what I do at Emerging College Advisors, I help affluent families cut through the noise. We target schools that want your student, integrate tax smart, retirement aligned, and cash flow conscious planning every step of the way. Just the other day, I had an affluent dentist write to me. Although I signed up for the college planning full meal deal to help with college planning for my son, I learned a great deal more about comprehensive financial strategies from you, way beyond what we thought we'd learn. Because people have listened to this before, you've heard me say, college planning is just a major expense that has the potential of collateral damage of everything else you're trying to do. And who wants to spend more money? They have to. So if you don't want to overpay, you want to start optimizing, start with our free Easy College Report, or just connect with us through Mergent College Advisors. That's Mergent, MERGENT, mergentcollegeadvisors.com.
Awesome. That's the show for this week. Thank you again for joining us on Money Tree Investing Podcast. My name's Kirk Chisholm, Wealth Manager of Innovative Advisor Group. We don't just manage your wealth, we make your life better. You can find more about me at innovativewealth.com. And of course, you can find me every week here on this show. You can also check out our show at Money Tree Investing Podcast. On our website, you'll have access to the show notes, resources, and the archive shows. Please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel for immediate access to the new shows when they're released. When you subscribe to the show, it allows us to get access to some of the top minds of investing in personal finance. While you're here, please leave a comment and question if you want us to address it on the show. Have a great week ahead, and remember, no one will care about your money like you do, so invest in your life.